my friends, I'm so happy you could make it. Welcome to this hangout. I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of June, which were a total of 17 books. But before we can get into all of the wonderful books that I read, just let me know how you guys are doing. Let me know how your reading month went. I am very curious to know. Sometimes in a lot of wrap-ups, I see a lot of comments that are like, oh, I only managed to read 5 books and I feel so bad for myself. I feel like I wasn't good enough or I didn't do as much as I could have. I know it's easier said than done, but I feel like you shouldn't put yourselves down for doing the best that you could in the month. I feel like quantity isn't really that important at the end of the day. As long as you're reading books that make you happy and as long as you're having fun while you're reading, I think that's really the most important bit. So hopefully I don't see any negativity in my comment section. You did the best that you could this month and I'm proud of you for that. So now that that's out of the way, I did want to talk a little bit of the overview of my reading month. I read a total of 17 books. And I read mostly fantasy again. I keep saying that I'm over the fantasy genre, but my most read genre every month keeps being fantasy. I also read a lot of literary fiction, which I am very excited for because I feel like that could be a potential new favorite genre, and it's always exciting to find new genres that excite you and just make you excited to read again. I'm just looking at the books and seeing if I have any new favorites. I have 2 new favorites, so that's always good. I read 3 classics, and yeah, I feel like overall I just had a really good reading month in terms of what I read, because I feel like there's only 1 or 2 that were really horrible reads and I wish I would have never laid my eyes upon them. But apart from those 2, I feel like I'm very happy with the rest of the books that I read. My average rating for the month was 3.97 stars. I don't know why I didn't get to the 4-star. Actually, I'm pretty sure I know why. It's because of this one book that just absolutely ruined the vibe that I had going on. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into all of the books that I read in the month of June. I actually started my reading month with a reading experiment. I don't know if you've seen this video. If you haven't, I will link it up here. I think it's one of my favorite reading experiments that I've done in a while. And it was reading Bookstagram's favorite books, or reading the books that Instagram keeps showing me in my feed. I really don't know how the algorithm works, but these books just kept on showing up and I thought it would be really interesting to make a vlog about them and see if Instagram's taste and my own match up. And for this experiment, I read 3 books. The first book that I read was The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides, still not sure how to say his last name. Mr. Jeffrey. I mean, I don't really feel like going into a lot of detail as to my thoughts because I do have a 40-minute vlog exclusively for these books. So I feel like I'm just gonna show them and maybe refresh your mind if you don't remember how I felt about these books. But the first book that I read was The Virgin Suicides. Stunning book, brilliant. It's definitely more than just an aesthetic book. I had so much fun, and I know that sounds really weird, but I had so much fun reading this book and analyzing what the author was trying to do. It's definitely very different from what I'm used to reading, and that's definitely one of the major reasons that I had so much fun reading this, because it just kind of blew my mind that these sort of books exist, and it made me excited to try more books like this. And then I went ahead and read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Mossbag. She is sort of this cult author. She definitely has this extreme following of people. She's kind of like a force to be reckoned with. I've heard that her books are really weird and they always make people feel sort of empty after they read them, and when I read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I definitely had a similar experience. I wouldn't say I relate to this character because our main character is this white woman, a very privileged white woman living in the Upper West Side of New York City, and just the way that she lives her life is very interesting. And because she's so unlikable, or because she's just this really complicated woman, because she's just this really entitled woman, it's very hard to like her and it's very hard to feel for what she's going through. But nevertheless, I just had a lot of fun reading this, and I think originally I gave this 3 stars, but the more that I think about it and the more that I realize that this book has just stayed in my mind through the whole month. I read this in June 5th, like really at the beginning of the month, and I'm still thinking about this book. So I think I also gave this a 3.5 stars just because, once again, the experience of reading this was amazing. The third book that I read for this experiment, and definitely my favorite out of the 3, was The Bell Jar by Miss Sylvia Plath. Some of you guys, if you've been watching my reading vlogs, may know that when I was reading The Bell Jar, I was also reading the unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath, and I kept mentioning how reading these 2 at the same time definitely made for, yet again, I'm sorry for being redundant, reading these side by side made for such a peculiar and such a unique reading experience, because I feel like if you read Sylvia's journals, then you know just how close this story is to Sylvia's heart, and how so many of the things that our character Esther goes through, Sylvia herself had to go through and survive and live with. It was just beautiful and haunting and heartbreaking and sad, but also such a joy to read. It's like really confusing because this is not a cute story. There is no romance, and I mean, the little romance that we have is very toxic. So I definitely wouldn't recommend this if you're looking for like a cutesy romance, you know, a walk in the park, a dip in the pool, a trip to the spa, endless days in the shade. If you're looking for that type of book, The Bell Jar is definitely not for you. But I just feel like it did such an interesting exploration of the human condition, and I just had such a wonderful time reading this. So these are the 3 books that I read for my reading experiment, the first of the month. Then I did another reading experiment, and for this video I read A Clockwork Reader's favorite books, or some of them. I read Her Body and Other Parties. This I think I gave it 3 stars in the video, but honestly, again, in retrospect, maybe it's probably closer to a 2.5, just because. This is a collection of short stories written by Carmen Maria Machado, and these stories are very interesting. They're also very weird, but like in a good way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Mostly for me, it didn't, but the ones that did, I feel like they hit all of the right spots. Unfortunately, it was only like 2 or 3 stories that made me feel that way, but I still had a pretty interesting time reading this book, and I'm definitely interested to pick up other works by Carmen Maria Machado. A lot of you guys have actually recommended In the Dream House, I think that's the title, and it's this memoir that deals with her domestic abuse story. I have seen several people read that book, and it looks really interesting. I think the main thing that I love about Her Body and Other Parties is how Carmen Maria Machado sort of blends and mixes different genres, like genres that you wouldn't even think to mix together. She sort of blurs the lines between them, and it makes for a very interesting product, and it makes for a very interesting reading experience. I keep mentioning reading experience, and I'm starting to realize that maybe June was all about experience. Like, you know that one Kylie Jenner clip where she's just like
the year of just realizing stuff, and everyone around me were all just like realizing things.
I feel like June is my month of just experiencing things. This is really the month of just experiencing things, because when you experience things, I feel like your experience, you know what I mean? Her Body and Other Parties. This is the first book that I read for A Clockwork Reader's favorite books. And then I read the first book that made me cry of the month, and that is The Stationery Shop by Marjane Kamali. When I first heard about this book and I heard that it was historical fiction, I was very afraid that I was going to go into this book with sort of like a bias because when I hear historical fiction, I just think, oh, this is gonna be kind of boring. I don't really vibe with historical fiction. Like, the few historical fiction books that I've read, I don't really vibe with. So when I went into this, I was ready to just kind of have a boring time. I'm going to be honest. Like, I went into this book with a very close mind. I wasn't expecting to experience all of the emotions and all of the feelings that this book made me feel. It was honestly life-changing, heartbreaking, soul-shattering, mind-bending. Anything that you can think of, this book made me feel. I mean, in the simplest of terms, it's this love story between two people, two star-crossed lovers, if you will. It's also this coming-of-age story because our main characters, they are growing up in this heavily politically charged environment, and they're also trying to discover who they are and what they want, separated from what the government is trying to tell them that they want and what their families are telling them that they want and should be. So it was this beautiful, it was just this very beautiful reading experience. Sorry, I keep saying that, but I just think that all of the books that I read this month gave me so much and taught me so much as well. And even though I am now in a reading slump, I am very grateful for all of the books that I read. And I think this is one of the books that I am most grateful to have read this month because it was just very beautiful, and it's very short, but very, very powerful. This is an amazing book. Apart from the fact that it's stunning, this is one of those books that are just as beautiful as they are on the outside. You can find the same beauty on the inside, but this is definitely an exception to the rule. So yeah, the third and final book that I read for this reading experiment was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I have already read and loved and adored The Starless Sea. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, she's right there. Look at her. When I picked up The Night Circus, I did have my expectations, you know what I mean? Like, after reading The Starless Sea, I was like, okay, this better be good. This better be just as good as The Starless Sea. My expectations are through the roof. And honestly, I feel like this book just exceeded every single expectation that I had. This felt like an out-of-body experience. It just felt like I was right there with them. I could hear the sounds of the circus. I could smell the popcorn. I could smell the magic in the air. It was just this really surreal experience when I was reading this book. I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the setting. I fell in love once again with the writing, the exploration of human relationships and how they develop or how they fall apart was just so wonderful to read. And I gave this 4.5 stars. I did. I really did. I did. This was just one of those books that are so precious that you just want to share it with the whole world because you just know that they're going to love it. But apparently not a lot of people do. Two of my closest friends, they hate this book. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just stand here with my love for this book that you two hate. I guess that's sort of the beauty also of reading. Like, everybody is going to feel differently about a book. You're never going to find two people with the same exact opinion, and I feel like that's what's beautiful about reading. But anyways, I really loved The Night Circus, and I had so much fun reading this, and I had like the perfect playlist playing on the background when I was reading this, which just added to this whole experience. I feel like I should get a penalty every time I say experience because at this point I feel like I'm overusing it. These are the 3 books that I read for reading A Clockwork Reader's favorite books. Again, if you haven't seen that video, I will leave it up here. I also really love how that video came out because apart from reading her favorite books or some of her favorite books, I also saw one of her favorite animes, which is Yona of the Dawn. That anime has me by the throat. My lock screen is hack because I cannot live a day without seeing his face. And yeah, I just love that anime. And even though it hasn't been renewed for season 2, I would still, and it's been like maybe 5 or 10 years, I'm not sure, I don't like to think about it. Even though it hasn't been renewed, I would still recommend it to everybody because it's such an amazing anime. Like, the characters, the story, the pace, the way that it's written, the music, the animation, it's just every single detail, every single element of this anime is amazing. 10 out of 10, oh my god, it was just so good. After doing so many reading experiments, I thought it would be nice to finally finish my reread of the Heroes of Olympus. So that's what I did. I read The Mark of Athena. Let's show them one by one. I read The Mark of Athena, which is definitely like the highlight of this series. This is definitely my favorite out of the 5 books in the Heroes of Olympus series. Then I read House of Hades, which this is pain. This book is just painful to read because it's just pain. If you've read this book, you know why it's so painful. And then I finished it off with The Blood of Olympus. Now, let me tell you something. When I first read these 2 books, I gave them 5 out of 5 stars. And upon reread, this is a 3.5 and this is a 3-star. You know what? Some things are better left in the past. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not holding up Mark of Athena just because this does live up to the memory that I had of it in my brain. I think when I first read it, I gave this 5 stars and now it's a 4.5, but it's like really... It's just me being anal about my ratings, but yes, these 2 is where some of the magic left the building. It left the premises. I did have fun rereading these. Of course, I always love spending time with Percy and Annabeth, Hazel, Frank, Nico, you know, the heroes. I love spending time with them. But for some reason, I don't know, like I just wasn't vibing as hard as I thought I would to these 2 books in particular. And even though I did have fun, because of course I was reading this with my friend Sid, so it was always a good time when we got to share our favorite moments or when Jason and Piper were being little. It was really fun to share that. That was my experience rereading the Heroes of Olympus. Let me know if you guys have read these books or if you're rereading them, because I kind of wish we had more Uncle Rick books to read because I kind of miss him and I kind of want to see what he's going to do next. I do know we have the Nico books to look out for, but we don't have a release date for those, so I'm not holding my breath because I would die. Okay, so this is when my reading month got ruined, just because I picked this up on a whim. I did have this book in my physical TBR and I was like, oh, this looks like a quick read. And after reading so many fantasy books, I was like, okay, I kind of want something a little lighter, a little quicker to read. And so I picked up a poetry collection. Some of my fellow simpers actually recommended to me when I asked for accessible poetry. And honestly, like, I just wish I didn't read this. I wish, like, it almost feels like a joke. It feels like a satire, but The Dark Between Stars by Atticus. Atticus is like this Instagram poet. He's all about that Gabby Hanna sort of poetry. There's like a lot of spacing and there's a lot of pictures, pictures that with hair, hands, body parts, basically. There's a lot of sun. There's this girl that's falling. Oh my God, that's so deep. I wish I would have tagged like the worst poems that I found here, but I was having such a bad time. I just wanted it to be over. I want to ask for my money back. I really do, and I think I deserve that. I think that's the least he can do. He remains anonymous, but honestly, there's like a few articles that says who he is, but whatever. I don't really care about Atticus. I care about the fact that I need to get my money back, because most of the poems that you can find here, most of the poems that are printed here that I paid money for, hard-earned money for, he posts them on his Instagram for free. What's the use of gatekeeping if you're not even gonna do it right? You know what I mean? Like, what is this? It's sort of an insult to call these random blocks of text poetry, because this is the farthest thing from poetry that I can ever think of. God, it was so bad. It was really so bad. After the atrocity, that was that. Yes. I read a really wonderful book. And yeah, thank you for saving my reading month, Mariana Zapata. Thank you so much. This is Dear Erin, and this was actually sent to me as a gift by one of my premium simpers. If you don't know, my premium simpers are my Patreons. And Allie, honestly, she deserves the most. I picked this up on a whim just because I was feeling kind of sad. I was feeling kind of down and I didn't really know what I wanted to read, but I've remembered my past experiences with Mariana Zapata and how she never misses, you know what I mean? Like, she's always giving. And I thought, hey, why not pick up this Mariana Zapata book and see if she can maybe make me smile, make me laugh, make me forget about my sadness. And she did. She did. Mariana Zapata once again delivered. She gave so much in this book. I also love sort of the format because it's not your typical reading experience. The first couple of 100 pages are actually told through emails and through text conversations, and that's very interesting to me because it's only literally just dialogue, and I feel like that was a really interesting way to start this book and to sort of set what their relationship was going to be like. And when they finally meet, I mean, I think you can see by the tabs, like literally the first half of the book, even though I really did enjoy it, it's just blank because you know what I mean. But then when they meet, oh my god, girly, yeah, this was great. In the vlog that I unboxed this, I actually got a comment that this book actually has some hurtful descriptions of Filipino food, and that's definitely not nice. That's definitely not something that I was expecting, and you know, it's kind of upsetting. It's kind of like disappointing from an author that you've grown to love to sort of rely on such hurtful and incorrect stereotypes. So hopefully in her future books she can do better, be better, and not rely on stereotypes as sort of devices to further the story or just to add like little quirks, because that's never a good idea. That's never fun. That's never nice. So definitely keep that in mind if you want to read Dear Erin. But apart from that, I really love the relationship between the two main characters. I also really related to our main character Ruby because she's very shy, and I don't know if you know this about me, guys, but I'm a very shy person. I'm probably the shyest person that you'll ever meet. You see me here talking, you see me here thriving, you see me here slaying left and right, but if you meet me in real life, I'm going to disappear. I'm going to self-combust because I cannot. It's hard. This next book is probably the one that I'm most proud that I read this month because I have been reading it since since April. Sorry, am I the only one that has to sing the whole month song to know what month goes next? If not, don't tell me. Don't make me feel bad. So anyways, I've been reading this book since April, and it was kind of bringing me down. It was kind of putting me in this reading slump, but I finally finished it. I finally finished The Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. I did mention it earlier when I was talking about the bell jar, but I finished her unabridged journals, and I gave this 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars is pretty good. 3.5 stars is okay. 3.5 stars may not be a new favorite book, but I definitely learned a lot reading this. When I say that, I mean I learned a lot about emotions, and I learned a lot about Sylvia Plath's life. It's so painful to read at times because Sylvia Plath did not have an easy life. Like, yes, she was very privileged in the sense that she had a really good education and she had a lot of opportunities that other people did not. But in terms of her mental health and in terms of the things that she had to go through, they are things that you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. I feel like Sylvia Plath had to survive a lot of things that a lot of us don't even have to think about. And it was hard to read at times. Yes, a little bit at the end, I was like, oh my God, can she not? Because she would just go on and on about the things that she had to buy, and like, you know, because she sort of became this housewife later on in her life when she married Ted, and it shows in her writing when she sort of gave up on becoming a writer and she just focused on being a good wife and someday becoming a good mother and just sort of like taking care of the house. Her writings and her journals really reflect that time period, because she talks a lot about like having a good day because she cooked a pie for Ted, or having a good day because she put all of the things that she wanted to do aside and she just supported Ted. It was very Ted-centric at times, and Ted is not a good person. From what I've read through Sylvia and from what I've read of the things that he did after Sylvia, during Sylvia, and before Sylvia, I just don't think he's a good man. I don't think that he had the right to burn some of Sylvia's journals, some of the most important journals that Sylvia ever wrote, which were close to the time that she committed suicide. I don't know why he had to burn them. Like, there's only one reason you would burn something, and it's because maybe it's evidence. Maybe she wrote the truth about Ted and he just didn't want the world to know about it. It's kind of sus, you know what I mean? And I don't respect that. I don't respect that. But anyways, this is not about Ted. This is about Sylvia and what she went through. I actually have my very own sort of annotation guide for Sylvia Plath, like her unabridged journals, because I started annotating this like I usually do any book, but the more that I read, the more that I realized that that just wasn't going to cut it. There was so many other things that I wanted to explore and so many other things that I wanted to analyze that I just went ahead and created my own guide to Sylvia. And it made for such an in-depth experience. I definitely delved deep into Sylvia Plath's psyche, and I feel like I understand her even more. And as I was mentioning, when I was reading The Bell Jar, because I was reading the unabridged journals, I feel like I understood the meaning and the significance of that book and this journal so much more than I would have if I wasn't reading this. I'm so glad that I read this. I don't know if I would recommend it. I don't think it's for everyone. I don't know who it's for. It's just this really weird situation because even though I did enjoy it, I don't know if a lot of people would. And I have seen a lot of people buy this book because I've been talking about it. But if you're not in the right headspace, if you're not into really, really, really slow-paced books, this isn't even a book, honestly. That's why it's so slow-paced. Can journals have pace? Because I feel like you can't really judge that since this wasn't meant to be read. You know what I mean? I finished the journals of Sylvia Plath, the alleged unabridged journals of Sylvia Plath, because Ted did see these journals before he gave permission for other people to see it. So we don't really know what he took out, what he left in. It's all really filtered down by a Mr. Ted. And I don't know how much I trust men, but he's definitely one of the ones that you shouldn't trust. Then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is actually my second time reading it, and I was rereading it in order to annotate it, because the first time that I read it in 2019, I read it as an audiobook, so I didn't have the luxury of having the physical book and being able to annotate it. But this time around, boy did I have it. Boy did I spend a lot of time annotating this book and finding allusions to Taylor Swift songs. Like, I even have my own tab for Taylor Swift songs because Taylor Swift wrote so many songs based on Evelyn and Celia and Evelyn and Harry and Evelyn period. Because of that, there are a lot of instances in this book where I'm just quoting Taylor Swift songs because it matches the scene, it matches the character, it matches the moment so perfectly. I just had so much fun annotating this, and I had so much fun as well because I actually annotated it for my Patreons. So I did an annotated flip through where I show every single annotation, every tear, every scream, every sob. My Patreons are going to see it in the annotated flip through. So if that's something that you're interested in, Patreon link is down below. If you're interested, of course, it's going to be there waiting for you. This was obviously a 5-star. I don't know if that's obvious, but yeah, this is a 5-star. And then I also read another book for my Patreon buddy read, which was The Last Cuentista, written by Dona. This is a science fiction middle grade book. And I gave it 2.5 stars. Sorry. This is why I'm telling you, you cannot trust a pretty cover. You cannot trust a pretty face anymore, because they will take advantage of your preconceived idea of what is going to be good. The best thing about this book is the cover and also how it looks naked. Let me show it to you. Look at this stunning, stunning piece of artwork. Look at it, it's amazing. And it also matches my snake ring. Let's go. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm actually very character-centered type of girl, type of reader. I really focus on character relationships and character development. When the book is very focused on the plot and sort of leaves the characters in the dust and doesn't really develop them, I lose interest and I kind of lose respect for the book, because I feel like the characters are everything in a book. So if you don't pay attention to your characters and if you don't give them this sort of development arc, what is the point of going on this journey if the character stays the same from page 1 to the last page? It doesn't make sense to me. A character needs to change, a character needs to develop, otherwise it doesn't really mean much. It doesn't really amount to anything. All the pain and struggles that we went through don't really mean much if the character doesn't reflect those changes and that journey. So yes. And then I ended my month by reading 3 volumes of Demon Slayer. Hi, I read volumes 15, look at him, 16, look at them, and 17. I do have to say, I think these are some of my favorite volumes from the ones that I've read so far, obviously, because the fight scenes and also just the way that this was written and the way, like the pacing and the perfect blend of comedy, but also action, but also the key moments that happen in these 3 volumes left me screaming, they left me crying, they left me bawling. It was honestly such an experience. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna read 1 volume and then I'm just gonna, move on with my day. I read 1 volume and then I couldn't stop. I literally could not stop. And as soon as I finished volume 17, I went and ordered all of the missing ones. So if you don't know, Demon Slayer has 23 volumes in total, and I went ahead and ordered the ones that I was missing because obviously this ends on a cliffhanger. I should have known better. I should have just bought all of the volumes before I sat down and read these, because now I have to wait until those volumes come so that I know what happens to some of my favorite characters. I cannot, the audacity of them leaving this on a cliffhanger, disgusting. But anyways, all of these were 5 stars because it's such a good manga, it's such a good story, and the characters, once again, I'm sorry, but the characters are so vibrant and they're so beautiful and they're so wonderfully flawed, and they're just such a joy to read about and to see them struggle, but to see them not give up and to keep on fighting. It's just so inspiring and it's so fun, and oh my god, what a perfect way to end my reading month with some 5-star god tier manga. Can I get an amen? Those were all the books that I read in the month of June. Let me know once again how you guys did in the comments below. How many books did you read? Did you find any new favorites? Did you find any that made you want to become illiterate? Let me know. I definitely have 1 book that makes me wish I could not read for the rest of my life, but mostly I had a really wonderful reading month, and I hope you guys did too. And maybe July is going to be even better. Who knows? Fingers crossed. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Hey Jimmy, you nice. Keep going.